Whether you are starting or managing a nonprofit, odds are you have heard of Charity Navigator, the world's largest independent nonprofit evaluator. On their website, charitynavigator.org, you can find ratings and rankings for almost 200,000 US-based nonprofits. And its goal is to empower donors, people looking to give nonprofits their money, of course, with the tools and the data they need to make an informed decision. Every year, their website is visited by over 11 million people. So in this video, I'm going to introduce you to the president and CEO of Charity Navigator, Michael Thatcher, and we're going to talk about what donors are looking for, what is inspiring them to give, how can you make your nonprofit organization more compelling and discoverable by them. Welcome or welcome back. My name is Amber Melanie Smith, and I'm a nonprofit founder and executive director. And I make these videos here on YouTube to help people who aspire to make an impact, whether that's through a nonprofit or social enterprise or other type of social impact venture. As always, I hope that you find this video useful and helpful. I think this is a really interesting topic, and I'm so excited to be able to connect with the folks over at Charity Navigator to bring you sort of like this insider behind the scenes information about what their insights are telling them, and how you might be able to use that information to get the support that your organization really needs. As always, please don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. Check out my website, Founder to Full Time, for content and online trainings for those of you who might be starting a nonprofit or looking to develop a sustainable fundraising plan. Okay, all that out of the way, let's go talk to our new friend, Michael Thatcher, President and CEO of Charity Navigator. Hey, Michael, it's great to meet you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Amber. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. I'm really excited to get into this conversation with you. To kick us off, I'd love to hear more about who you are. What is your role at Charity Navigator, and a little bit more about what Charity Navigator does?
Sure. So I'm the president and CEO of Charity Navigator. I've been doing this for about 7 years, and we aim to really democratize philanthropy and make it easier for anyone that wants to do anything in the social sector, have access to information and ratings so that they can make smart decisions in their giving practice. We do this by shedding a light on some key areas of nonprofit performance and health. And this is all available through a website which has the full sort of set of legally registered charities in the United States, so 1.6 million. And then within that, we have actually come up with ratings on almost 200,000 of them at this point. Donors can then search on the website around a specific cause area, find areas of interest. As we like to say, you pick the cause, or actually, I think what really happens in life is that causes grab you by the heart and say, I must go do something about this. Charity Navigator then helps you actually find an organization that's doing good work in that direction. We also facilitate the giving process. So there's a giving basket that lets you give directly from within our website. And we also put together curated lists. So you have, when there's something unfortunate happens in the world. We just had 2 hurricanes come through that actually created a lot of damage in our country and in other countries. We'll quickly put together these Give Now lists or hot topic lists, which help you find an organization that may be doing something in that specific region around that specific issue. The last thing I think is important that we do is we have an advisory system, and that sort of indicates when inappropriate behavior happens or there's accusations thereof. We let donors know that these things have happened, and it helps inform their decisions more effectively.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't even know about that last part. I know you all do so much great work around what you said, helping donors figure out where to give their resources that's going to align with their values and their interests. And I think I read that you have millions of people who visit your site every year, right?
That's correct. There are a little over 11 million unique visitors that come every year. Some people come more than once, but we tend to only just count the, the unique individuals, and that's been growing pretty steadily over the last 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I think people are really thinking about, their purpose and their opportunities to create change in their communities. And we all know donating is a part of that. So it's very helpful to have a platform like yours where someone can go look for the right fit. And on the nonprofit side, I know that your website, correct me if I'm wrong, pulls in this nonprofit data from the IRS and these resources. So your nonprofit could be on Charity Navigator and you might not even realize it, right?
I think the thing to realize is that if you're a legally registered 501c3 nonprofit, and if you've been e-filing with the IRS for more than 3 years, you will be on our site and you will have a rating. If you exist in what we call the business master file from the IRS, you're definitely going to be found on our site. And I think that's it. There's a unique opportunity with that because we offer you the ability to provide additional information. Both you're going to get the IRS data, but if you have any information with Candid, we pull in that information as part of the ratings. And then we also have a nonprofit, what we call our portal. So if you go to charitynavigator.org/portal, that'll allow you to actually input additional information, register with us, be known by us. All of this, by the way, is no cost. We do not charge charities. We do not charge the donors. We are a charity.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
we're also on our own list, which is sort of fun.
That's right. You all need support too. And I will leave, folks watching, I will leave the links that Michael's sharing in the description of the video as well. So you can go check that out too. Okay, Michael, so we know that you are sharing information about tens of thousands of nonprofits. And from all that, you've got to be getting some really great insights about donor behavior, where they're donating, what kinds of things donors are looking for when they choose to give to an organization. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about what the data is telling you. What do donors want?
Sure. And I think there are a couple of themes here. There's one, what are the topic areas or causes that they're giving to, and then what are they looking for within that through our ratings. And so, for example, right now sadly we've had a lot of bad things happening in the world, from COVID, the racial reckoning in the United States, the war in Ukraine, more recently some hurricanes. And so when there are these external events that take place, people's hearts are opened by them and they want to do something about it. And so we're seeing a lot of very reactive giving to some of these global events. So for example, we created a list of highly rated organizations on Ukraine relief area, and that's already, just since February, we've had over $4.3 million go through our giving basket to that.
Wow.
And the average gift in the giving basket, it's about $100.
Okay.
Right? So you're talking thousands of small gifts that are going to some of these charities. We saw similar things, let's say go back a year or back during COVID. There was a lot of giving towards COVID and COVID relief. At a non sort of reactive philanthropic sense, there's a lot that goes to development. And for example, between 2022 and 2021, we saw about an 85% increase in donations to development and relief services. Now, some of that I think is Ukraine related, but a lot of it's just more broadly around the world. People want to see how we're, help everyone's situation. The other is multi-purpose human services. So this is really, think of homeless shelters, food banks, getting care to people. The world's been struggling with the aftermath of COVID. The other thing that I think we're seeing really a strong shift in what donors are looking for is they're asking for impact.
Yes.
Show me results, right? They're also asking they want to understand who they're giving to. So it's not just what you do, but it's who you are. And I think, think of, do you have lived experience within the area that you are trying to address a problem?
Yeah.
Or are you just imposing your own external views? And so what we've started, and this is new data that we're beginning to collect as well, is, what's the demographic composition of the organization, its leadership, its board of directors? We're seeing also a trend. What are your DEI practices? And does diversity, equity, and inclusion actually mean something for you as an organization? And how are you actually addressing that organizationally, and then with the programs that you're actually rolling out in the world? And so that's another shift. I think in terms of if I were to give you sort of top searched organizations on Charity Navigator, I would say in the relief area would be Doctors Without Borders, UNICEF, World Central Kitchen, some of the big names. So it's very definitely the sort of the large popular organizations. Same thing in the environmental space. It'd be National Wildlife Federation, Nature Conservancy, and entities like that. St. Jude's, Planned Parenthood, a lot of the more known household names. And I think what we're also seeing is that smaller community-run, community-led organizations have traditionally not had as strong a place on platforms like Charity Navigator. And so we're seeking to actually create an ability to raise one's profile so that you will be more discoverable. And something that's it's a little bit beyond the nature of your question, but it's where we're going in the future with we have an update to our website that's pretty significant coming in November. And we're trying to facilitate searching based on demographic composition, based on area or geographic focus, so that you can actually really pinpoint where you want to give, who you want to give to, and then track that as I like to say, it's not about giving, it's about investing in social change.
I love that. All right. So let's say you're on Charity Navigator, or even if you aren't, Charity Navigator can still be a great guide for understanding how to reach donors, right? So what are some concrete things that nonprofits might be able to do to catch the eye of the donor, to be more compelling and hopefully attract a donation?
It's a great question. And I think, ultimately is you want to be able to share in a meaningful way who you are and what you do to the donor. And platforms like Charity Navigator allow you to do that with what I would call sort of third-party accreditation and a filter. We're going to look at your data and we're going to bring it in, we'll assess it, we'll issue a rating on it. But there are other platforms as well. For example, Candid collects a lot of information, and donors look at Candid. Candid is also, they supply data to many of the other platforms, be it the DAFs or Amazon Smile. If you haven't updated all of your information with each of the respective platforms, BBB's Wise Giving Alliance is another one that I would go through their process. It's actually meaningful. We suggest at the simplest level, you've got to be e-filing at this point. All of the digital platforms are relying on a digital footprint. The bigger footprint you have, the easier it is for donors to find you. So make sure you're e-filing. Make sure you're reviewing what your accountant is submitting for you. Your 990 is a really important document, and any self-respecting donor of any size is going to look at that document. Your board should be looking at it, the CEO, the senior staff everyone should be signing off on that document.
Yeah.
The other thing I would do is Charity Navigator is now rating organizations on 4 key areas. We look at the finance and accountability information that's coming from the IRS. We also, when available, we're evaluating on impact and results. We look at leadership and adaptability, and also culture and community. Most of that data you can actually supply to us through the nonprofit portal. Again, charitynavigator.org/portal. And then the culture and community data we're collecting through Candid. So we're licensing in information from Candid so that we can then use that as a part of our ratings. And so I would highly advise, just make sure you keep your profiles up to date. The other thing that's, if you're rated with a high rating, we have a branding kit. If you've got a good rating, brag about it. Donors love to know that you have 3 stars, 4 stars. You can really take advantage of that. Another thing I would look at that's really not everybody knows about, but Google ad grants you can get up to $10,000 a month in free advertising from Google. You got to sign up for it. It doesn't just happen. So make sure that they know about you. Look up Google ad grants. You probably have people that are trying to help you optimize the ad grants if you have them. I can tell you, when you do optimize them, it does make a difference. And then the other thing is, you've got to tell stories, but use data to back your stories. And I think that's where the platforms come in again, is we can help you validate your story through the data. And then you're doing a nice cross-reference between what you say and then what the neutral party, third-party platforms are saying.
And for those of you who are just starting a nonprofit or just getting started with this whole, work in the nonprofit sector, just kind of summarizing a couple of things that Michael's saying. If you're not familiar with the 990, you will get familiar with it very soon. As a nonprofit, you have to file that every year to the IRS with an accounting of your financial position there. DAF was a term we heard earlier. That's Donor Advised Fund. Definitely look into those if you haven't already. So one thing I know I've struggled with as a nonprofit leader, and I know that many nonprofit leaders and fundraisers struggle with this too, is a feeling like you need to really appease your donors and seek funding opportunities that will align with what the funders want or the donors want, instead of remembering why we got into this in the first place, which is to serve a specific community need that we identified, right? There's all this talk about making sure that your work is community centered versus, exclusively donor centered. And I want you to talk a little bit more about this tension between making sure that you're always meeting the community's authentic needs while, not alienating a donor, but bringing them along for the journey.
This is, ironically, it was through working on something called constituent voice or beneficiary voice. That was my path to joining Charity Navigator.
Oh, okay.
And I had spent over a decade working in Africa, the Middle East, and also Asia on a lot of economic and social development programs, using technology as a lever for change. And what we realized was we were smart people from the United States that thought we knew everything, and we go into these communities in Africa or in a small country in Asia, and with all of our great ideas, and most of the stuff didn't work. And what we had to do was start listening to the communities. And so it's about creating a dialogue, and that's asking questions and saying, what do you need? Right? Or, hey, I gave you blankets last night, were you warm? Or, because too often we'll go back to the donor and say, we gave out 10,000 blankets. But if no one's warm, right? If the blankets aren't enough for the temperatures, then it's essentially useless.
Right.
And so I think that's the piece and the donor will get that, but you have to have the dialogue first. So if you know the community you're working with, you're going to refine your programs or what the work that you're doing to address a need. They're the best ones to design it, but you've got to figure out a way to actually ask questions around that. And so there's a lot of work around beneficiary feedback that looks at also, you have to factor out the bias of the community as well. Everyone has biases, and we have to factor those out and then figure out, all right, we need to do this a little bit differently. If you're able to articulate that journey and how you're actually improving your program, that will definitely resonate with your donors.
Yeah. And, it's hard because a donor might be like, I'm really passionate about this and this project. And to have to say to them, okay, that's great, but this is what the community actually needs. You're taking a risk. It's hard. I get it, but, to your point, it's so important.
Maybe, I'm being a little bit tongue in cheek here, but you're taking a risk by running a nonprofit. Right?
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So in other words, you've decided to engage in some form of social change.
Yeah.
You've got to stick to your guns. You've got to be And that doesn't mean chasing donors.
Yeah.
It's chasing the truth of the solution you're trying to provide. It also may mean that you don't necessarily, have the best story for your donors, but I think this is where transparency and dialogue really comes in, because if you can actually help your donors understand they need to listen to, you'll get some benefits.
I love that. And, part of fundraising is that donor dialogue, that donor education. And I know that there are some other myths and misconceptions that donors might have about nonprofits and fundraising and donations. And what do you think? What are some of those that you hear a lot, and what are your thoughts on them?
I mean, there are a couple of really probably, obvious myths. And one is one we call the overhead myth.
Mm-hmm.
The other one that we get a lot of questions about, which we redirect, which is CEO salaries. People want, and part of this that comes from the notion of charity, I think. But these are not, nonprofit professionals are professionals, and they deserve to be paid fairly. Donors often misconstrue salary as overhead. And if you have someone that's delivering a service, their salary is actually program spend, in a
Right.
pure and simple ways. And that, as to the nonprofit leaders out there, if you're delivering your program, your salary is not overhead. Your salary is a program spend, and you should be allocating it that way on when you report on your 990. So that's an important.
Thank
Yes.
you for saying that.
So you really need to be clear, because otherwise everything gets grouped into overhead, and then that's just misrepresenting your organization.
Right.
The other challenge with this myth of overhead is that, well, the challenge has been that the inability to articulate the impact that one's making in the world leaves the donor looking for some sign of trustworthiness and good stewardship of their dollars. You take that plus smart marketing, which I think is now biting us all on the backside, which is saying 89 cents of a dollar, it goes to
Oh, man.
saving whatever, right? The reality is that that's unhealthy, and that will actually starve your organization. And if, just to put it in the context of Charity Navigator ratings, we're a 20-year-old organization. We started 20 years ago, and that's all we looked at, right? We were 100% focused on financial efficiencies and sustainability. About 7 or 8 years in, we had some changes to the IRS Form 990, and we added accountability and accountability and transparency metrics, looking at governance practices like whistleblower policies, and do you have a privacy policy on your website? Are you protecting your donors' personal information?
Yeah.
Today, we're looking at a much broader swath of information, because what we realize is that donors care about the health of the organization, the impact and results of the organization, and then who they are. Do I resonate? So go back to your original question about communities. Do I resonate with this community? Are they of the community that they're even serving? That's super important now. And so we're trying to make that information available, that for a nonprofit leader, you want to make sure people know who you are. And so again, use the platforms to make that information known.
All right, Michael, we are learning so much. And I really think that the nonprofit leaders and the aspiring leaders and the change makers who are watching this are going to get a lot out of this and probably race over to Charity Navigator and see if their nonprofit is in there. But I just want to hear from you, if there's anything else you think is important for current or aspiring nonprofit leaders to know, what would that be?
I think it really is about articulating the difference that you're making in the world. And there's such, go back to what we were talking about overhead, the focus on where is the money being spent is actually not that interesting. It's what is the money achieving? And so being able to articulate that, hey, with this money, I was able to do that. Mm-hmm. I think it's an essential piece. And in the spirit of, there's another trend that we're seeing in giving it's something we're calling trust-based philanthropy, where you establish trust in some way or form with the entities that you're wanting to support. Once you've got that trust, pretty strong about letting donors know it's, let the leader of the organization lead. Do not tell a nonprofit leader who is a professional in what they do, how to run their business, right? It really is, that's trust, right? We're hoping that with our platform at Charity Navigator, you can actually, we will help donors establish that trust. If you think about, I say we're trying to democratize philanthropy, but ultimately we're doing that as a bridge of trust between the charities and the donors that love and support them.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for your time today. Excuse me. And all of these insights and, folks watching, I know you're going to get a lot out of this and think about how you can work on that storytelling, sharing your impacts. So Michael, thank you for your time today.
Amber, thanks for having me on this program. Really appreciate it.
All right, let's hear from you all now. Do you feel like this gave you some things to think about to beef up your donor relations, your fundraising strategy? I'd love to hear about it. Share in the comments below this video. As I mentioned, I'll also leave the link to Charity Navigator in the description if you want to check that out. Maybe see if your nonprofit has its profile up there and what Charity Navigator has to say about you. I hope that you enjoyed this. As always, don't forget to check out my website, founder2fulltime.com, for those online trainings and resources all about starting a nonprofit and developing a sustainable fundraising plan. Very important. I also have a newsletter for changemakers and nonprofit leaders. You can find the link to subscribe to that in the description below as well. Finally, I have a Facebook group. My dog in the background scratching her butt. I have a Facebook group called Change the World or Bust, where we've got thousands of people from around the world who are trying to do good, having some great conversations. So I hope you can join us there too. That's all I have for you today. Hope to see you next time. Bye.